It's Stevivors Friendly Fire Show, episode 230 for the start of March 2023. Time is flying. I'm one of your co-hosts, Steve Wright. Joining me from his studio in sunny... Is it sunny? I don't know. Sunny Adelaide, South Australia. Ben Salter. Hi, Ben.
We're back, Steve. What have you been doing? I mean, not that we ever left. To the listener, we were always here, but we're physically back.
Well, we said, yeah, I was in Tasmania for the last week, and you were around rural South Australia.
Yeah, yours sounds a lot more fun than mine. Tasmania, what were you doing over there?
Wineries, breweries. We stayed at the Sapphire Fraisenet, which is like $3,000 a night. We didn't pay for it.
Whoa, must be nice.
It was like the biggest case of imposter syndrome I've ever felt in my entire life. It's like, I don't belong here. They know that I don't belong here. It was weird. We went to an oyster shucking experience, like in a river where they were like literally taking oysters from the water and opening them and feeding them to us. And the guy,
I did that as well in rural South Australia, but I was filming other people doing it. Did they teach you how to do it? Like that was the whole thing, how they shuck it.
Yes, but people of our caliber certainly don't do that ourselves, Ben. No.
Yeah, I'm not really a big oyster person, and I mentioned that. I wasn't really on the tour, but they gave us some anyway. And I did it my usual oyster way, which is just like down the hatch, get it done. Like that's the only way I can really. And the woman's like, the correct way to eat an oyster is like chew it 2-3 times and then swallow it. And so I did that. Disgusting. It's a mouthful of salt. Much worse. If you're like me and you're not a big oyster person, don't recommend that. But that's what you're meant to do, apparently.
I love oysters. I had no problem with that. But like the tour guide, my husband thinks was hitting on me a bit. So he kept like shucking them. Instead of putting on the table for everybody to grab, he just kept handing me like newly shucked oysters. I had like 25. And, you know, I love oysters. But after like the 15th, I was kind of like, I was just eating them to be nice. Like, thank you. Please stop. And the tour guide's like, oh, so have you been to Africa? It's like, no. Like, is it a rich person thing? I don't know, but like I've never been to Africa. I've been to Canada.
Well, you're living a much higher life that I'm aware of. You're eating oysters. You're staying in a $3,000 a night room. Insane. I don't even know you anymore.
It was not like it was lovely, but I don't think any room is really worth $3,000 a night. I'm sure there are expensive rooms that are like an entire 50-story building or something that might warrant that. Okay, maybe my idea of what things cost is like completely shot, but anyway.
What do you get for $3,000 a night that's different compared to like $300 a night?
Like a nice hotel room that had like inclusive wine and like an inclusive minibar and stuff, but like we hit that element of it pretty hard the first night, and then we felt so awful the next day. It's like, well, okay, that was that out of the way, and now we'll be responsible adults again. So it was good. It was just, yeah, it was a lot. And I didn't answer your question at all, but I don't know how to. So that's it.
All right, I'm not gonna bother with that. And in the meantime, we haven't really been playing anything new. You've just been playing Kirby. I forget which one it is. The one of the many Kirby's. There's been so many in the last
year. Dreamland Deluxe, I think.
That's right. The Wii game. That's now out on Switch, which you said is fun enough, but it's pretty much a bare bones remaster. More of a port, really, upscaled port with some new content.
Content in the form of mini games, which is. We have enough mini games on the Switch and the Wii and the Wii U. In summary, like if Metroid Prime Remastered is like Nintendo doing it right, I think that the Kirby game is Nintendo doing it wrong, because there's not a lot on offer. It's kind of like one of those stop gaps while we wait for whatever comes after the Switch. It is what it is.
Definitely that.
Did you finish Metroid Prime? Are you back to GoldenEye? What's going on with you?
I'm on my 3rd or 4th playthroughs of GoldenEye. I did finish Metroid Prime. It's probably like a 10 to 11 hour game if you know Metroid. If you remember it, because you played it recently, it's probably like a 6 to 7 hour game if you remember where to go all the time. It doesn't really tell you. So it's not actually that long. Maybe it's like 15, 16 hours if you haven't played before, you don't know. Still, very good. The whole thing's very good. But yes, I went back to GoldenEye. You'll be proud of me, Steve, because the achievement difficulties don't stack. So I played it on easy the first time through, then I played it on super hard, which is tough. And the middle difficulty, I don't have the achievement for. Went to true achievements, don't stack. You need to play it through 3 times. And the 4th time is I'm trying to play it on Switch with a 64 controller the old school way. And man, that hurts my brain. Playing with one control stick, I've kind of gotten back into it, but it's tough. Like, it's hard on easy. Whereas like playing on the hard mode on Xbox with modern controls, it's eventually doable once you figure out a plan. There's no way I could do that on an N64. So good luck to you if you're playing on Switch.
Well, and you've done it on the super hardest, and it would have been nice if everything just kind of fell in line. But at least now you can play your last go, or you have played your last go on Xbox in like a more enjoyable state, I suppose.
Yeah, it should be easier. I don't have to do this. I've unlocked all the multiplayer levels, but I would like that achievement. I thought it was going to stack, and it feels incomplete now. It's also pretty quick. Once you remember this game and you know the objectives, I can get through it in like an hour. So
that's not too bad.
Yeah.
I did take an Xbox with me on my trip, and I played like so many Souls-like games. It's weird.
You're in a $3,000 a night room and you're playing Xbox.
Well, only the one night, because Matt drank way too much that first night and then was like in bed by 8:30 the second night. So I'm like, I guess I'll play Scars Above, which is a sci-fi shooter, kind of trying to be Returnal, but not doing it very well. Reviews up on the site if you want to read it, because, you know, Penn didn't play it. Why would we talk about it? I can't talk about Wolong Fallen Dynasty yet, but it's by Team Ninja, who did Neo. That comes out in a couple days. So by the time you've listened to this, you can probably head to the site and check out a review, which will be live then. There.
So you have been playing stuff.
I have been, but I wish I was playing, especially in the case of Scars Above, some good Souls-like. And who better to make a Souls-like than the people who put the souls in Souls-like from Software? Not that we're talking about a Souls game, but we're talking about Elden Ring. It has DLC announced in the least hype way ever, I guess.
Very FromSoft, isn't it? Good news though. You know me, I'm normally not a DLC person, because normally the DLC comes out so late I don't care anymore. I've moved on. I will definitely be going back for Elden Ring. I've got the 1,000 in it. I need to get the other achievements for the DLC, but also just a great game. And I'm keen to see if I can play it after probably 18-month layoff by the time the Satsi comes out. It's certainly a game that I think we've said many times on this show, you couldn't put down and just pick up again 6 months later. So trying to do it a year later, just pick it up. They're probably not going to have, most games when you do DLC, it's kind of this is how this game works again, in case you forgot. And this is an easy start to it. I think they're going to throw you right in with something pretty tough. So
they'll probably change around some button configurations just to keep you on your toes.
But I'm excited, and for some reason that kind of makes it more compelling. If anything, I know it's going to be challenging. It's going to be brutal. I'm ready to jump back in. And yeah, it was just pretty much a tweet saying we have DLC coming. They didn't even say when. I don't know if they even said it's DLC. Maybe it's more like an expansion. I think they just kind of said Elden Ring, Shadow of Erdtree.
Yeah, I can't remember what the word they used, but yeah, it is DLC. This isn't the first piece, I guess, of DLC technically, because that Coliseum PvP stuff came out. But I think you and I are both definitely not that demographic. So this is some PvE stuff, some core Elden Ring gameplay. And there's a whole bunch of memes because it's Shadow of the Erdtree, and it's oh, I didn't realize they're making a sequel to that Middle-earth franchise. Now it's, Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of the Erdtree. Very much in that kind of fantasy realm. But yeah, Elden Ring was great. The lore, if you really get stuck into it, was intriguing. It's not Millennia. She was or maybe it is Millennia. It looks like it's
don't know the lore.
It looks like it revolves around a character with a name starting in M by her hair, as in the only piece of concept art that they've shown. So that has people super excited. Not that I really care about that. I just want to get some more hacky slashy going on.
Yeah, very exciting. We don't know anything about it. Not a fact-based show, so we have no facts anyway. I would suspect it's out this year. For them to tweet it now, surely it's out in the next 6 months or so, and they wouldn't go November. I think they probably want it to come out mid-year so that they can release the Game of the Year complete edition, whatever, on disc, full price again, in time for that holiday rush, and it will sell like crazy. 20 million copies sold or something already. This will easily push it up another 10 mil, I'd say.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. That's not a lot to talk about though, because it was just literally a tweet.
It's the thing everyone wanted. That's what happened. So we kind of had a few announcements at the start of the year, things people wanted, which are not that massive, but it's just what people want, and they're happening. So we've got that. The other big thing to happen since we've been away is PlayStation VR 2. I'm going to say came and went. It released and kind of disappeared. I haven't heard that much about it.
It's not the thing that everybody wants, or maybe they do, but because it has a $1,000 Australian price tag, it's maybe the thing that people want but aren't necessarily going to get straight away. Good assessment?
you and I, because you've been putting down 3 grand on hotel rooms, you don't have one. I don't have one. Jay on the site did get one, and he's written about it, and he pretty much said it's great. Like it works really well. I think the thing that stuck with me is he doesn't regret buying it at all, and that's kind of a win, I suppose, because I think I definitely would if I bought one, because it's mostly just going to sit in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah.
But he also wouldn't recommend it. Like it's so expensive that it's very hard. The fact that it costs more than the console, they put the price of the console up, and this thing still costs more than it, and that's with no games. It sounds like playing GT7 in VR is like awesome, and I can see that it would be, but it's kind of like one of those things that I'd like to try somewhere at someone else's house.
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't think I need to get it. Yeah, it's a tough sell for that cost.
And like, because I got a VR1 sent to me from Sony, and like that was the kind of fun thing. It was people who hadn't experienced VR would come over, and it's like, well, here's like the underwater, you're in a shark cage diving with the sharks experience, and they're like, oh, that's cool. And like the really like adventurous, it'd be like, okay, well, here's the Resident Evil kitchen demo. Have fun with that. And that novelty wore off really quickly for us, and there were so many cables, and it was just a horrible setup, and like you put everything on. I remember I was playing, I think it was Iron Man VR, and I came home and I took off, like I just played for like an hour and a half, and I took off the headset when I was finished, and Matt was just sitting on the couch beside me, and it scared the crap out of me because you can't see or hear. And with VR2, it sounds like a lot of these problems are alleviated because there's only one cable that goes from the console to the headset. You've got the button now that lets you give yourself a view of the room around you, not like just like icons or whatever, like sensors that show you if you're going to hit a wall, but like you can like literally just use the external cameras to see what's around you. All the like concerns about VR1 seem to have been addressed in VR2, but it's still $1,000 unit with a library that has what Jay called, like Horizon Call of the Mountain, a pack-in game that's not a pack-in game that you have to pay for, that is kind of limited. And if it was a pack-in game, probably would have done better in his assessment than something that you're dropping up to $110 for. And a library of VR titles that are largely already on PC. And not a lot of other titles that have been announced. So it's slim pickings right now. And it's like, so who does this cater to? The people who haven't tried VR? Well, maybe you're better off getting a VR1 because it's the same games or similar. If you're into VR, you probably have a really good PC for it, and you already have most of these games on that platform. It's a bit of a hard sell right now, but that doesn't mean that's not going to change. But I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like it's always going to be in that category of like, who's this actually for? And it might be great, and there might be that killer app on it, which is just you need to play this in VR, which then it almost goes the other way if that does happen. If it's like an exclusive game that's only on VR, or it's something which just plays so much better in it, does that then diminish that game for people who are not playing in VR? Which is kind of the same as like what happened with PlayStation Move and what happened with Kinect, and to a lesser extent the Wii Remote, because it was in everything. It was kind of like when those got added to things, it was kind of like, okay, that's good, but I don't want it to be the main thing because I would like to be able to play this without that. So yeah, that's always what I think with this type of thing. It's hard to know who it's for. It sounds like it's great, but I feel like it's going to fall away. Like they might have kind of 1 or 2 games a year, this is the VR game for the year, but it's mainly going to be a bit of a fad, like in the same way that Move was a fad and Kinect was a fad. Like they might sell millions of units, but I don't think it's really going to go more mainstream than that just because of the cost.
Yeah, well, and like one of the easy ways to combat this is Sony throwing studios into VR to make VR games. But obviously, millions of people have a PS5. A very small fraction of that, I'd imagine, have a VR2 unit. And, like Sony's argument of, oh, well, we're only, putting a lot of development into these games, we're going to sell them for 110 as a result. Like, if there's only 1 or 2, like, triple A, quality Sony games coming out at 110 a pop, they got to be a lot better than Call of the Mountain from the sound of it. Not that either of us have played it, but that's what I would say. That's what I would want before I even contemplated buying one of these things.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be that. It's going to be, if you want it, it's probably a fun experience and worthwhile if money is no factor, and good on you if that's your situation. I think for most people, though, it's going to be a very hard sell, and it's probably going to be never really on their radar. I know heaps of people kind of said, like, I had it in my cart and then I never checked out because it's that psychological barrier of it's more than the console. and how often will I use this thing? It's not like buying another controller. It's not like buying. You're better off if you have just a PlayStation at this point. Buy a Switch or buy an Xbox. Like buying a whole nother ecosystem of consoles is going to get you way more games. It's not going to get you a different experience, but it's going to get you a bigger library, which I think is probably more worthwhile.
And not that, other VR headsets are that cheap, but, for $1,000 you can get a relatively decent, well, if not just a console, like you said, you can get a relatively decent, PC that can run VR. And then you just, add a little bit extra to get an existing library of hundreds of games on VR if you're really into wanting that VR experience. Like, I don't know if VR2 is the platform for it just yet. While we were away, Sony did a state of play that featured, half on VR games. None of those games interested me to the point where I couldn't tell you the name of one. But they finished up with a look at Rocksteady's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Did you watch the state of play, for one? Any thoughts? And two, what did you think of the Suicide Squad stuff?
I watched it live, and I tuned into the state of play 20 minutes in, and that was accidental, and I kind of thought, no biggie, I'll have missed the VR stuff, which I'm not going to buy VR2, so it doesn't matter. I was still on that. So I kind of got the tail end of that, and then, it was having the Resident Evil 4 trailer was pretty cool. Like hadn't seen much of that, so that was a hit, and we'll chat more about that next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, besides that, it was kind of a series of it felt like the first kind of third of the Nintendo Direct, a bunch of stuff, which I'm sure people love, but it's not for me. And yeah, as you said, they ended up on Suicide Squad, which got this huge 15-minute presentation, which is very different for a state of play, and that kind of direct format like we're seeing now. It's normally being game, and it's coming kind of short, and it's mainly gameplay. It's not that developer chatting about something. This is almost like what Xbox used to do when we said Xbox dragged things out too much.
It felt like the Bethesda E3 showcases where they talked about, not only did they show like a 5-minute trailer for the Elder Scrolls Online, then they then decided to talk to developers for 20 minutes about it, and about 5 minutes in I was just like, I don't care. Well, with the Elder Scrolls Online I don't care because I'm apathetic to it. With the Suicide Squad stuff, it just looks like generic microtransaction live service game as a service nightmare. With 4 characters who I really don't care anything about. Maybe Harley Quinn's the exception there, but it's just they all have guns and they're all shooting as if they were the same character with different skins. King Shark is like this giant ass shark who jumps around and should be like the Hulk and eats people, and he has a gun. Captain Boomerang, whose name is Captain Boomerang, isn't using his boomerangs, he's using a gun. Do you see some problems in what was presented, Ben?
Yeah, I think but with the exception of Spider-Man, they're ruining superhero games. The last few have been absolute stinkers. Gotham Knights, not fun. And Avengers before that, it's already been discontinued essentially. Was clearly a game that shouldn't have been a live service, and that's what ruined it. It's just been a series of not great games. When they had Batman Arkham, that was the one that kind of kicked this all off, that series. And they're trying to continue that with now you get to play the bad guys, but you're multiplayer, and it's ugh. It's not what you want. No one wants to do that. People want to play in the Batman world as Batman. It's that's what you should be doing. There's hope for things like Wolverine. I'm glad we're getting some different takes on things, but if you're going to continue the big series, I don't know what's going on in that Batman world especially, but even the Avengers games, not great. Gotham Knights, not great. What are they doing?
Well, it's those two in particular, and even Gotham Knights to the same extent. They look like, oh, let's be Destiny, and then somewhere through development they're like, oh, we can't do that for some reason or the other, and they try to pull it back, and it's just this weird jumbled mess. Suicide Squad has the need for a persistent online connection, even in single player, just like Gotham Knights. Did Gotham Knights? I can't remember. There's other games that do. Maybe Saints Row. Was that one of the ones that had the same kind of weird thing? None of those games worked out very well. Whereas the Wolverine game coming from Insomniac looks amazing, because it's probably going to be like the Spider-Man game from Insomniac. Because it's just a single-player story where you're controlling someone that you have an invested interest in. And the Suicide Squad, definitely not the case. Rocksteady was supposed to make... Well, they could have just made another Batman game. They could have made maybe Gotham Knights, without this live service stuff and made it something that I would have liked. They were trying to make a Superman game, which got canceled, and they got put onto this garbage truck fire thing. Not that we've played it, and maybe it's going to be great, but I highly doubt it. Warner Brothers is just making really huge missteps, not only in video game superhero stuff, but like with their cinematic universe or whatever they're trying to come up with. Like, it's just, find something that works and stick with it. Don't try to do something weird. Like, I'm surprised we didn't see a whole bunch of NFTs or something from them. Like, that's one thing that they happily managed to avoid.
Yeah, I think they've had some wins in trying to take a series and not use the main characters, do something to the side of that, like Hogwarts Legacy recently is a good example of that. They've done it with like some of the Lord of the Rings games, which was good and nothing to do with the actual main story. It's just set in Middle-earth. But like, yeah, they seem to be trying to apply that mindset to these superhero games, and it's just not going to work there, because the thing is, it's not the world that's interesting. Like, the world of Middle-earth is interesting, and there's heaps of things that can happen there. The world, like the wizard world of Hogwarts, there's heaps around that main story that can happen there. The world of whatever's happening in Batman is not very exciting without Batman. Like, the things which happen in that world are set up for Batman to go foil these problems. Like, if you're creating them, it just doesn't work for me as a game.
Even Hogwarts like didn't really need RPG elements like cloaks that have 20 points more than other cloaks and this and that and the other. Like, you don't need it. You don't need it. You can have upgrades and different skills and stuff. That's fine. But like, I don't know why Rocksteady thought it would be great to have that. Everyone's seen this picture of, Captain Boomerang with this giant, green camo sniper rifle that he's like super happy about. And it has like less DPS than the gun he already had equipped. It's like, I don't want to loot chase in a game about 4 supervillains. Like, so, the weird thing is, like, I know there's a Wonder Woman game coming from Monolith, who did the Shadow of Mordor games. Like, those look exciting. Those games are exciting, and the Wonder Woman game excites me. You get what I mean? Like, there was a bit where Wonder Woman in the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League stuff, she's not controlled by Brainiac yet, so she's like, lassoing Flash and saying like, what do I have to do to stop you? And he's like, you just have to kill us. Like, that's the game I want to play. I want to be Wonder Woman taking on the Justice League, not like the D-grade villains with guns shooting at an invulnerable man from another planet. Like, I don't know what that's going to do unless you get kryptonite bullets or whatever. Like, there's a far better story to be told, and you've kind of highlighted that, but we're just supposed to ignore it and play the live service game because you want my extra money.
Get that cash. Yeah. It feels like Rocksteady's making a spin-off, even though they're meant to be the main developer. So they've demoted themselves, essentially.
Wow. It would put me to sleep. Well, maybe it won't. I'm just trying to find a segue into Pokemon Sleep, which I forgot about. And you've in the show notes reminded me that this wasn't like a new announcement. This was something from like the pre-COVID times.
That's why it's kind of interesting. So they have Pokemon Day once a year, which is the anniversary of Pokemon Blue and Red, Green, whichever it was called in Japan, coming out the first time. And of course, everyone thought it means those games are going to come to Switch Online. They tweeted like the box art for them, and then they didn't put them on Switch Online, which is a classic Nintendo move. But they did say Pokemon Sleep is back. So this is an app which we just all assumed went the way of the Vitality Sensor, and which is quietly cancelled, and they realized it was a real dud. Apparently, it's successful. It's a mobile app for your phone, which tracks your sleep and then somehow tries to gamify that so that you wake up, and based on how you've slept, you have access to some Pokemon, which, I don't know, may or may not tie into Pokemon Go. I kind of got bored at that point. What do you think of that? Can you gamify sleep?
Well, apparently you can. Not that I'm looking forward to it. And you can buy a plus thing, which I guess you
It's a plus. Oh, there's already a plus. It's the plus. You know when they write plus and then they do the plus icon, plus.
I don't. If you're watching the video version of this podcast, you could see me almost having a seizure. I'd hate that idea so much. Like, cool, I guess. That just, I don't know. I have sleep things on my phone that I don't use. I have a wearable that I like to track my steps, but I'm not going to wear it to bed because it's uncomfortable and weird. And I generally know how I sleep. Not very well. I toss and turn quite a bit. And having an app telling me that that's the case, I don't see how that benefits me. It'll just make me realize that I maybe sleep for like 2 hours solid a night, and then the rest is just like a charade. Like, I don't like. Is this going to help me sleep? Is it a sleep trainer somehow? If that side of things somehow exists,
I doubt it.
Well,
I don't know.
But I guess I
Some
could get
people
a
might be into
Charizard
it.
from staying awake or
Some
not.
people might be into it. They might be, yeah, they might want to see what Pokemon they somehow caught by sleeping. Uh, Kind of weird. You're not meant to have your phone. Everyone does, but you're not meant to have your phone next to you when you sleep anyway. There's something that it's better for you to leave in a different room. This app kind of feels like it's made for kids in that instance. Like it's a bit more fun than the Samsung or Apple Health tracking your sleep. But then kids are probably the main ones that shouldn't have their phone with them because they're it's kind of like us playing Game Boy under the covers. Now you just got your phone when you're meant to be sleeping. So like, yeah, I don't really know who's going to use it, but it's interesting that it came back from the dead. That's the main thing here.
Well, maybe this is one gimmick you can sleep on.
Ooh, I think
That was like
I think we should leave it there, Steve. That's
this is the weirdest point in time because there's a whole bunch of games coming out, but like they're not super amazing games. Not yet. We're getting into some good ones at tail end of March and like surrounds. There's a lot going on, but at the same time there's very little going on. So this was a lean like 25 minutes, Ben. Not that we need to extend this and try to stretch it out, but this is where we are.
This is the length, if you recall, listener, to like 50 episodes ago when we rebooted this thing. We said they're going to be about 25 minutes, up to 40 max, 25, 30. We've rarely hit that. We always go slightly over. But this week we've delivered what we said. I like a tight 25. It's good for the commute. And why don't we just leave it there? On that, we'll see you next week for an action-packed episode all about Resident Evil 4 Remake. We've seen a bunch of gameplay. We can chat about some of it while we're kind of watching it or what we saw. And the original game, how it kind of compares. It's out in a couple of weeks. So great time to look back at Resident Evil 4 next week.
Bye.